Hello, everyone. Um, I'm Daniel. I am the one who has been composing the tracks for Twilight Rites, and I am also the creator of Twilight Rites itself. I am its writer. Um, a while back, a few of you, who I'm very grateful for, did say that it would be kind of cool actually to see, you know, me dissecting one of these tracks I've written. Uh, kind of see like what's going on behind the scenes. How does this not definitely not a professional nor a very skilled composer compose his tracks? And so I've kind of decided that I want to go into how I composed Malach, Holy Blade of the Abyss. Now, some of you who are watching this might wonder why I haven't chosen to instead go over something like Nadir, Devour the Microcosm, since that is my most viewed track. Um, but to become quite frank, I feel like I wanted to do something different. I wanted to go over a track that features not just the grandiose sections of an orchestra that's just blasting in your ears. Malik sort of offers that variety. There are some very quiet sections, parts that are less melodic, more so harmonic, rather than, like I said, an orchestra blasting in your ears with a melody and whatever else you can think of. So essentially, I've chosen this track because of its phase one. This is a two-phase track. So once again, I'm gonna put this disclaimer out there. I am by no means a professional composer, nor do I think I'm a very skilled one. There may be a lot of things that I'll try to explain during this uh, dissection that perhaps are not done as best as they possibly could be, or God forbid, even correctly. Like, they might not be correct for that matter. I hope I explained everything correctly. If I do, then forgive me. Um, if you are looking to learn how to compose orchestral tracks on a professional level, then you can quite literally find a bunch of YouTube videos far better than this one. There are books out there. There are so many outlets out there that are far more reliable than I am. So if you're watching this video for purely the entertainment of seeing how an early intermediate, is that, I have that written down here, early intermediate. I don't know if that's the right term, but someone who's not entirely new, not quite professional though. So if you want to see how someone like that composes, then you're in the right spot. Um, I guess then I'll also start the dissection by, well, before I jump into that, rather, I want to talk about what was the inspiration for this track. Uh, so initially, uh, I was playing Elden Ring Night Rain, and I heard Heolstor's track. I loved the phase one. I thought it was awesome, and I thought it was very fitting of this like strange like being of night, yet human. You know. But when the phase two came, I've noticed that Elden Ring Night Rain was centered around this notion that you, the people you play, are the ones that have the story. The bosses this time, well, particularly Heolstor, doesn't really have this depth to the character. When you play other Soulsborne, you're kind of just this nobody, and you just sort of like by some force of will or something outside, beyond the scope of human reasoning, something has chosen you, or you've just woken up, and you know you've got to go kill this thing. But in Night Rain, the opposite is true. You have a story, and the boss that you need to ultimately kill, Heolster, is very bleak in terms of story. So I saw that reflected in his Phase 2 music. What with the leitmotif from the main menu, it felt more like, okay, this is sediment of what point of the journey you're in. You know, the Nightfarers are there to slay him, and this is the pinnacle of their journey. So now, uh, like I was saying, Heolster's Phase 1 was the inspiration. Shoei Miyazawa, I think he did a fantastic job with the track overall. Like, the track is outstanding. I just feel like, for a Souls boss, the Phase 2 didn't it didn't really fulfill my expectations. And of course, by no means am I saying that he did not do a good job or he didn't compose right. I can't even begin to start thinking that. Because, first of all, anyone composing for From Software is quite literally way beyond my league. So, what I'm saying here is just purely, something that resonated within a mediocre, sorry, composer. Uh, anyway, so now that that's been made clear, let's go into it. So a couple things to note first. Uh, key signature D minor. Very rarely do I do anything else in this piece. There are a couple moments where temporary tonicization or otherwise modulation, if you want to call it that, into E minor, E flat minor. Yeah, otherwise keys pretty much rooted into D minor. 140 BPM, composing 6/8. Although this put an asterisk on that 6/8 because the way I do compose is like I treat 2 bars as one measure in FL Studio 20 to be precise. I'm using. Okay, so let's jump straight into the MIDI, I suppose. Start from top. Starting from the top, I've got this first violin here. It's playing a very high, but quiet, sustained note here. Just a pedal tone all the way up to bar 49. So what this is doing is essentially it's serving the purpose of, something ethereal, something higher up, something beyond. I would say, I'm not quite sure what I was thinking when I was composing this track because this was months ago and my skill set was completely different. My knowledge was completely different. So I'm not sure if I was thinking about it on this like philosophical, lower perspective. But this, if you can hear that, this is a very high string and it's kind of eerie to me. And the fact that it's so high up in pitch symbolizes to me that, this boss, Malach, despite him being a human, there's something higher about him, something beyond just the scope of humanity, the scope of what we call reason, what we can only begin to fathom. So then there's also the symbols, very quiet. These are just, your classic rising symbols. These kind of just, give us the sign that, okay, something new is beginning. There's something being introduced. And it's not there for no reason. There is something new. Before that, however, I should say, there's this percussion here. Very low percussion. And the purpose it's serving is that there are these like very sparse, sparsely placed notes. They're very quiet. They just kind of hit like low thumps, and it kind of just feels like something is dragging its feet. It's just not dragging. Sorry, I shouldn't say that. It's kind of like taking very slow footsteps, and it's like super low pitched. Uh, we've also got We've also got bass here. And bass is typically just outlining this D note, and if anything, only really moves down to this leading tone of C sharp to D, right? And then it's also reaching a peak at E when it does modulate. So essentially what's happening is that the bass is kind of keeping you locked in this, D minor. And to me, at least as a composer, that kind of gives me the feeling that, you know what, just like every single story, shown throughout the Soulsborne games, you cannot escape this darkness. And this darkness, for example, in the case of Malach, Holy Blade of the Abyss, is that you cannot escape this D minor. You cannot escape it. Now, we've also got, there's some modulations going on here, not much though. However, we've got ambience here. This ambience, it's sort of there to fill in the frequencies, I would say. Essentially, what I've got playing there, I mean, it's just, we've got a D on a very low octave and a D on a very high octave. That is essentially nothing. That is just noise, right? So that's not doing much. This, however, is doing a lot, and I will play that for you actually. Let me just turn off these effects because I want you to hear the original sound. So it is a very long piece of ambience. So I am not gonna let all of that play out. We've got another bit of ambience here, and this is sort of an accompaniment to the earlier percussion I mentioned that was played on a very low velocity and sparsely. It's sort of mimicking that, whole footstep thing, like those low thumps that are spread out. Right? So I think this is pretty cool, and it gives a lot of more depth. It fills in those frequencies that are missing, albeit, it's not very interesting, but when you listen to this, I mean, what is this? This just sounds terrible, no? There's not much going on. You've got the drums there, or the percussion, I should say, that is just, doing those like footstep type of things I was saying earlier. But it's not enough. It feels too narrow, it's like you're looking at the fine details of a bigger picture, but when I introduced this ambience, especially once this one starts, I feel like everything has widened, I'm not sure if that really means much, but how would I explain it? It's okay. Here's a really, really stupid analogy, I guess. But for those of you who have played Elden Ring, when you're fighting, or when you're going to fight a mimic tier, right? It's doing the thing where it's gonna transform into you. Where it kind of like the blob just sort of rises, and then once it falls back down, just like there's mist flies everywhere, and widens out. Such a stupid analogy, but that is what I envision. It's like all of a sudden your surroundings have become obscured by this um incomprehensible fog, and you're just sort of like, what's going on? Okay, something's happening, but I don't know what's happening. There's something strange happening here. That's essentially what's going on. Um, that must have been a terrible explanation, but you know what? It is what it is. We go with it. So now, um, moving a little further into this intro, we've got this starting from bar 17, a celli. A celli, before even that, rather, we've got what was once this super high string here, played by the first violins. It's now dropped a full octave, but it's also going to this leading tone, the C sharp here. And naturally in the natural minor key, so in this case D Aeolian, that would be a C natural. You know, we've got D, E, F, G, A, B flat, C, D, right? That's your D natural minor scale. But instead, what we're doing here is taking the flat 7 and we're turning this into a leading tone, right? For those of you who know functional tonal harmony and whatnot, this is elementary to you. So I'm doing that. For those of you who don't understand, the reason I'm doing that is because it creates this tension, you know. When you hear this D, there's the C natural. It's not really creating any tension to go back to D, you know. I could just leave it there, and albeit it's not like the cleanest thing ever, but I could leave it there, you know. However, if I do this, well, now this leading tone, as the name implies, it wants to lead to somewhere. Where does it want to lead? To D, the tonic, which is the most stable. And in this case, that would be D, in the key of D minor. So I'm doing that because it creates that, you know, eerie tension. And, you know, if I were to use the flat 7 instead, it wouldn't feel very, you know, well, I guess like I said earlier, eerie. It would feel, I think, more sad, you know. And that's not quite what I'm going for with this track, you know. And especially because given I am the writer of um Twilight Rites, wow, can't believe I forgot the name of my own story. Shame. Given I am the writer of Twilight Rites, I know best these characters. Thus, this leading tone just works. It works phenomenally for the character Malach, Holy Blade of the Abyss, whatever Holy Blade of the Abyss is supposed to mean. Um, anyway, moving on. We've got second violins here now. So or sorry, not second violins. We've got this celli here that's been playing. I realized that I actually I jumped the gun a bit. I went a little too far. Whoops, but that's okay. I've just explained preemptively. So we've got this cello here now. It's playing sustained tremolo. We've got, you know, D, so the tonic. We've got the fifth scale degree A and the fourth scale degree G. So obviously this is not in root position. And you'll see that, well, for those of you with a trained ear, you will know that or notice that I don't, or I often do use my chords like this, where they're not in root position. Um, but of course, it's not just like that. You can see right here, they are now basically in root position. It's just the voices are now technically just doubled down here, right? Um, so what I'm trying to get at is that the reason for this was that I felt like it added on to Malak's character of this, like, dark and evil being. Well, I say being, but he is just human at the end of the day. Anyway, so reason for that is because, I mean, listen to this. This part was inspired by Heolsor's Phase 1, by the way. So that sounded pretty dark, I would say. But now, if we listen to this section again, raised 2 octaves higher, or maybe that's not even what I should do. Maybe I should just actually raise this. It just doesn't sound right to me like that, to be honest. One, the register is a little too high. And two, it's not, because the register is so high, it's not really giving this dark feeling that I'm going for. The other reason I'm doing this is because this doesn't feel, as clean as root position. So while this did not, like this in root position, while it did not suit my needs, I think ultimately it did sound clearer. The problem now is that it sounds clearer, and that I need the kind of like muddiness. I don't know if muddiness is the right word here because it's not quite muddy. It's not like a clash of frequencies, but it's also not, so harmonically simple. I don't know. I don't know if that's right, but I guess that's because this is like technically this interval is a fourth, right? Perfect fourth. And based on counterpoint, it's kind of like two species counterpoint, I guess. I don't know. Not really. But this creates this sort of like dissonance. So if that makes any sense, then I guess you understand why I did this. But in other words, this creates, or like TLDR, this is darker. This sounds darker than this, right? So moving onward, like I said earlier, I've jumped the gun by accident and explained this part at the leading tone, right? One more thing I should mention about it is that this part with the high strings, with it, dropping down an octave, going back to the whole philosophy of Malach is this, like, there's something higher about him, he's beyond just human reason and we can only fathom it. The closer he gets to you with each of these steps that we're playing, right? The closer he got to you, the more the humanity you see in him. Don't know if that really makes sense, but I can only presume that is what I was thinking back when I was composing this track, or perhaps I was not thinking about it like that. Regardless, I think it sounds okay, so it works out. Then we've also got the second violin introduced. So it's playing one line, essentially the roots, along with this leading tone in a sustained tremolo, and then it's playing just simple, sustained notes on top. Just the classic, from before, this perfect fifth, or the scale degree 5, scale degree 4, scale degree 6 to 5 again, and same thing over and over. What else is new? I see this line, but I'm gonna ignore it for now. The percussion did change a little bit. As you can see, it's following a different kind of rhythm. So now it's more like dun, 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 dun. So, I guess it's sort of like dropped that whole footstep type of thing. Or maybe it is still like footsteps, like maybe he's like stumbling or something, I don't know. Anyway, moving down to cello here. We've got now an introduced higher octave or doubling of what would normally be this tremolo line, but now as just, a purely sustained note, a clean note. I'm not too familiar with the correct terms for these string instruments, but you know, you can hear it. It's playing this simple sustained note. Again, scale degree 5, 4, 6. So the reason why I did this is because when I was composing, I noticed that if I kept this line up top, it played as a sustained tremolo, it almost felt overbearing on the rest of the orchestra that's currently playing. But it also, strangely enough, felt like there was a loss of depth, loss of harmonic information. I don't know, or maybe not harmonic information, but rather you know, it felt empty. So I guess lost that depth. Basically, is what I'm trying to say. And I can demonstrate that right now. Here I'm gonna play it right now. That's it. There we go. No, this is the wrong spot. Sorry. Right over here. So do you hear how loud that is? That doesn't feel right to me, and like I said, it feels overbearing. So going back to how it was before, as just a pure sustain note, I think it fits a lot better. Here, give it a listen. So what this says to me is that, it's not as overbearing, and this, or rather these two lines, they have been sort of separated. Like now, to me, it feels clearer what tone is tremolo and what is just a pure sustain note, right? Uh, Perhaps to the untrained ear, it might not matter, but to me, I can pick up on that vaguely, kind of. But point is, I can notice it to a degree where it's like, okay, maybe this kind of articulation would have changed it. So I ultimately decided to go with this because it gives it more depth and it's not as overbearing on the rest of the orchestra, in my opinion. Now, for the rest of this, we've also got violas. Violas are giving the harmonic information here. So it's essentially outlining our chords, or rather giving structure to our chords, filling in the triad, right? Because before we only had our 1 and 5, our scale degrees 1 and 5, 1, 5, 4, 6, right? Now, however, we do have scale degree 3, 2, 4, back to 3, and that's it. Just repeating, right? Now, we start off on 1. Tonic is the strongest, right? As per my disclaimer earlier, I have no idea what this chord is called. This D, E, and G. I guess, what can I tell you? This is what you get from someone who's not a professional. I'm sorry, but DEG. What would this be? This would be like a. I mean, it's like a what a one add sus d sus 2 add 4. I don't know, and then you just don't include the like you exclude the fifth. I I don't know. I've most likely got that wrong, but I don't know. It's it's again, I'm not a professional, and I don't think I'm a very skilled composer either. So anyway, moving on to the next chord, analyzing the harmony here. We then go to our 4 chord. So that's just G minor, right? And then go to our 1, back to our 1, the tonic. So what this is a plagal cadence, right? For those of you who are familiar, for those of you who are not familiar, this is a plagal cadence, sorry. So we go from chord 4, which in this case is G, B flat, and D, back to chord 1, D, F, and A. And I really love the plagal cadence. In fact, you'll find that it is a very strong and prevalent part of Twilight Wright's sonic identity, along with um, your good old 5-1, 5-7-1 cadence, and the reason for that is because 5-2, or sorry, let's start before 4-1. I believe that it had something to do with religion back in the day, or like there was some religious attachment to it, and so it kind of feels, right with the story, because a lot of this story for Twilight Rights is surrounding or it surrounds, between humans and pacts with higher beings, right? I wouldn't call them gods. I would say they're more like, it's just higher beings. That's simply what it is. They're just on a higher portion of the hierarchy. So that's what the 4-1 cadence is used for, at least if we're gonna connect it to the lore of Twilight, right? And then the 5-7-1 is just such an ancient, well, not ancient, but it's old. It's an uh, old-fashioned way to approach, tonal harmony, and I mean, it works. It works fantastically. The resolution 5-7-1. It's so strong, and it really is used a lot in Soulsborne music. I've noticed it creates this, this feeling that everything around you regarding, the world building of a game or story, whatever you want to call it. It's ancient. It's not. It's not. You're not around during its peak. Everything has crumbled by that point. So anyway, I digress. Let's move on to analyzing the rest of this section. So, excuse me. We've also got this bass line here. It's sort of also mimicking the whole footstep gimmick thing, where on the downbeat of each bar, I suppose you could say, it's it's accenting it kind of, and it's doing it at a faster rhythm than before. Before it was a little more sparse. Now it's tighter. The rhythm is it's shorter. So I guess that's like kind of picking up the pace a bit. That okay, something now is going on. However, things are still going quite slow. Um, is that about all? I think that's it in terms of MIDI. We do have tubular here, but that's like basically it. I mean, tubular is not doing much, as you can see. You know, it's just occasionally there. You know, every so often. Uh, I already went over the drums or the percussion rather. Cymbals again. Cymbals are not doing really much else. It's just these rising cymbals to signal that something new is beginning in regard to the music. Um, that looks basically it for the MIDI. And now going down here, we've still got this ambience playing. We have introduced this piece of ambience here. Now, as you can probably tell by the wavelengths here, I'm using this first half of it. There's a reason why I don't use the second half. And it's because this second half kind of feels like, I don't know, Vikings and or pirates or like blowing a war horn or something. Just the sound of death. That's what it is. And it's way too loud, and it's just not fitting. It's just not fitting for this portion. I don't think it's right. But here, I will play it for you. Let me turn off the effects. So you'll hear just this first portion here in the waveform. That's the part I'm using. Here comes the second one. Now, assuming you've listened to Malach, Holy Blade of the Abyss, and you have a rough idea of what it sounds like, or you loosely remember what phase one sounds like, that doesn't fit at all. In fact, I'll even show you right now that it does not fit. So so you hear that first bit. Now listen to this. To be fair, it is playing kind of offbeat there. But I can confidently tell you that even if it was playing on beat, on the downbeat, it would not work. I mean, you can probably tell that for yourself. It's not fitting, It's a little too strong for this section. And we have one more piece of ambience here. Let me actually play that for you so you can hear it. It's a kind of a rise and then... Yeah. So, I mean, I heard this, part, or this piece, or sample, I should say. I heard this sample, and I just thought that, with the ambience I had already set up, that really just, like, I mean, it sounds beautiful, I think. Something about that sounds beautiful to me. I really like it. So what I was saying was, I heard that, and I thought it would fit perfectly. And then what's next? So we've got some automation going. Oh, I suppose I should mention a bit about the automation. A lot of it is pretty much the exact same stuff, like all throughout. Like this is the same, like basically here. This is the same as this. I'm not someone who does a whole lot of, these automations and whatnot, and humanizing my tracks. It takes too much time. As someone who is not composing for a living, I can't afford to do it. I've got other things to do. And as far as it currently stands, the tracks are just gonna stay like this. And I suppose this also leads me to one more thing on my tangent here, that these tracks are not um they are not finalized. They are subject to change, um, possibly even removal or repurposing entirely. Uh, so what you have heard thus far on my YouTube, everything can be changed. Um, and in fact, most likely every single track will get revised. And the reason for that is because a lot of these tracks, they are not mixed uh to, well, I wouldn't say a professional standard, but they're not they're not mixed at really, period. They're just very loosely mixed here and there, and so a lot of my tracks right now, the volume balancing just sounds off. I've noticed in a lot of them, but you know what? I think it's okay because that's intentional, and that will be addressed later on. Uh, and of course, the reason for that is because I don't want to perfect the tracks, so early into the development of Twilight Rights. And, you know, why not just get the whole OST out of the way first and then go back and edit everything, right? It's like it's like an essay, you know. You get everything on the paper first, then you go back and start editing everything. Don't start editing in the middle because then you might confuse yourself, you might remove something important, or you might have like left in something that shouldn't have been there. A bunch of weird things can happen. So, anyway, let's explain the rest of this. So we've got this automation here, the stereo enhancer on the master channel. So if you don't use FL Studio, essentially what this means is that on the overall volume of the entire track, right, what I'm doing is with this higher value up here, the volume is being raised. And the reason for that is because this otherwise sounded way too quiet, I think. And perhaps that is a sign of my mediocrity as a composer, that, you know, I could have mixed or, I don't know, done something better rather than having to resort to, just boosting the volume, the overall volume itself. But it served its purpose, and I'm satisfied for it, or sorry, satisfied with it as it currently stands. So I'm just gonna leave it for now. And like I said, everything will be addressed later on. I will go back to revise these tracks when Twilight Rights is, looking, the road to formal publication, is looking clear. So anyway, that would be the automation, the ambience, and there is one section I did not address yet. I believe this is just the last part that I need to address. So this is a harp, the harp bit that plays in phase one. I really like this harp bit. I think it's pretty neat. I don't often write harps much, so it was kind of fun to include this. But anyway, this portion I've highlighted here, I think, well, looking back on it, I think this was just utterly useless and just pointless to include. Because one, this was supposed to serve as a sort of rising, this, like, the velocity here is supposed to serve as a rising function. While it does do that, the problem is that it's too quiet. It's too quiet. Here, let me show you. So this is when the harp actually plays, right? This is the section that's dedicated for it. And, even then, when the harp is playing in the section where it's supposed to be the focus, it's still pretty quiet. So I guess that's another mixing issue. Again, it will be addressed later on. But that going back to this now, it just sort of speaks to me that, like, okay, I took out all the strings from before, made this the focus, this part of the harp the focus, and it's still too quiet. How is anyone going to hear this? And how does this add anything to what I had previously? It's sort of just extra information there for no reason, right? I mean, you can't hear it. I can't hear it. I'm the composer. I know that it's there and I can't hear it. It's pointless. It's absolutely pointless. Nothing short of useful or uselessness. Anyway, sorry I go on tangents, but anyway, point is, I will revise that later on. Moving on, so we get to a cutscene section. Basically, also I should say that this would be the loop point where the harp plays. And then it loops, right? So that would be like the phase 1 loop. And then we get to, the cutscene. So what I'm envisioning for a cutscene here is that it's gonna play from this portion approximately 203 to approximately 305, right? So it's gonna do that. This whole portion will be a cutscene. I don't know if that's kind of long for a cutscene. Maybe it is. But it doesn't matter because we're not even close to this point anyway with the development of Twilight Rights. So, cutscene, not much is going on in the cutscene. The cutscene is essentially just percussive elements. I mean, there's bass. Bass is it's being played around with by use of its master volume. I think more importantly, we've got the ambience over here. It's kind of dying down. The ambience fades to black. So once I got to this point, and then I noticed that okay, I've ended the ambience. I sort of told myself, okay, this is where phase 2 starts, because I've achieved what I initially set out to do, and that was the inspiration of Heolstor's OST. Honestly, let me even just play that bit real quick for you. You can hear like this this ambience, So obviously it's not quite the same thing. Point still stands. This bit was inspired by Heolstor, and I think I achieved what I was going for. So then phase 2 starts, and phase 2 starts here. But let me play it from here so you can get the idea. So cutscene starts here, there's not much going on, not even in terms of percussion. Like there's a little bit, some hits here and there. Got cello, violas, and second violins introduced now, starting off quiet, and then they take over. Alright, so this is where phase 2 starts. So, I think I should look into the harmony for that one. So the phase 2, it starts off with actually second violin, and so again non-root position. Let's actually look at the cello instead because that starts earlier. So cello starts off here. Before we had this line here, this doubling up here, the tremolo. Now we've gone from tremolo to purely sustain notes. I'm not sure if I should have glued all of these notes together, like make them one big note. I don't think I should, because that would technically be like an infinite bowing, which might be strange. Whatever. I mean, again, subjective change. All of these tracks are. So yeah, so I've got this playing now in sustained notes. It's sort of, helping signify this phase 2 has started, because now it's something different has started. We've got the second violin. We also have violas, but violas are doing a completely different thing. So cello and second violin basically are doing, this harmonic identity I've set up so far. I've also got cymbals. Now there's like the cymbals now, the percussion are getting loud. And obviously that's to set up for the chorus that's gonna happen, everything, the exciting bits. What else? Still got, a pedal tone on the bass, sitting on D. However, we have introduced a melodic idea, and that comes in the form of the women's choir, and violas, and also first violins. Now, I'm not sure if this is like an orchestration crime that the violas are doubling the first violins, but shoot me. I mean, it sounded good. And so I'm sorry if any professionals or like anyone who's at a higher level than me sees this and absolutely cringes. I'm sorry. I've learned that if it sounds good, it is good. So anyway, we've got violas, female choir, and first violins playing this portion. So, something noteworthy about this is that from measure 129 up to 145, this melodic identity here is actually taken from the Twilight Rites main menu. So it's been recycled, including this set of chords here. Well, it's more like power chords, I guess. Sort of. Yeah. This was taken from the Twilight Rites main menu theme, and in fact, I can even show you that right now. Beware headphones users. Okay, there. So let me find it for you. Let's see. What is it here? Yeah. So that's what that sounds like, and let's hear it here. So the exact same thing, right? Just slower. In fact, it's even in the same key. It's in the same key, D minor. But this is just slower. That's all it is. Same key, same time signature. What else do I have to mention here? There's a second violin over here now. It's doing this waltz-like thing. So you've got your in 6/8. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right, that's what that's doing, and it's sort of going along with the chords down here. If you got your minor one, technically this is the 4 chord, and then this goes back to minor 1 again. Then this the intervals. So yeah, okay. So this is like a minor 3, perfect fourth, minor 3, major fifth or third, minor 3, major 2. So that's what that is in terms of intervals. I think if anyone who understands harmonic series and intervals way better than I do is cringing at what I just said, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. We've also got second violin here, following the chords. Essentially everything is just doubling. Like, yeah, violas, are just doubling this portion here. Like this bit. So, not much going on. And bass is, again, doing this sort of footstep thing, right? So now I guess that means we can move on to the chorus, the fun part. Let this actually play into it. So, yeah, it's kind of like a bridge leading up to the chorus. What we've got going on again, also in terms of automation, is not much, Again, we're just playing with volume. That's really all it is. There's this one over here, this XYZ controller. This is just a reverb control. So essentially, it's making the affected instrument sound closer or further away. In this case, the lower this gets, the closer it sounds. So anyway, I'll look at the MIDI for the melody now, the main melody, or not even. I guess you could call it a melody, but at the end of the day, it's all just chords played in a rhythm. So yeah, let's look at it. So we've got first violins. They're playing. I should actually say not just the first violins, but also the entire string ensemble, save for the bass, is playing marcato. 1-to-1 with the choir. The choir is the main focus of the chorus here. So we've got first violins. The only other thing along with the bass is that this second violin here is playing the staccato line. I'm not sure if ostinato is the right term to use here because, you can kind of see that, it's being played differently. I don't know. It's kind of got the same architecture to it, but I'm not sure if it's, similar enough in one phrase to call this an ostinato. Surely someone out there is seeing this and knows better and can correct me on that. But anyway, so that's second violin. Then we've got another second violin patch that's just playing the first, well, the root, this leading tone as well, the root and the leading tone, and also doubling the fifth scale degree, fourth scale degree, sixth scale degree. It's, again, it's the exact same thing that actually appeared here. So it's like I've kind of foreshadowed that this is what it was going to be in phase 1, just in a much darker setting. So then if we also look at the choir here instead, of just the strings, we can see the entire, harmony. So we've got D minor. So our minor one, A drops to G. So I don't know, what is this, like a D sus4? Um, just, with the exclusion of the fifth. I'm not sure what to call it. And then like sus2 add 4, exclusion of the fifth. Again, I'm not a professional, and if you were hoping to learn, well, this is what you get with a non-professional. I hope someone can correct me on that. Then we've got our minor 4, G minor. Plagal cadence, which is 4 to 1, minor 4 to minor 1. So D minor. And then it repeats again. We've got the first half again. This is the exact same thing. Only thing that's different now is that we've got the leading tone here. This is actually this norm. Okay, if you look at these red notes here, this is a dominant 7 chord, or sorry, a 5/7 chord, dominant fifth, not a dominant 7. This is a dominant fifth chord. So in this case, before it, instead of using the fifth, we're using the sixth, and that's sort of it's creating two tritone intervals. So I guess that's like a diminished 7 chord, a diminished 7, right? Someone correct me on that if that's wrong. But essentially, the two tritone intervals that we've got here is a C sharp and G, and this E and B flat. This should read B flat enharmonically. But FL Studio is a little cringe. I don't know how to change that. I mean, I don't even know if FL Studio can just do like full scales. Not that I would want that anyway, because it is fun to go out of key and even modulate. How would you modulate then if you're just working in only one key? So anyway, I was sort of doing that, and then so the reason I did this is because it creates this really gritty sound, I would say, and it's a lot of tension, huge amounts of tension, and it is a very strong pull to the tonic. So D in this case, and in fact the 1 chord. So you would want to go from this diminished 7 to minor 1. I believe I'm breaking the rules here by actually not doing that and instead letting this B flat fall to A. So now we're at our dominant fifth. And then I break it even further, I think, by just not resolving to 1. Instead, now I'm just using this diminished chord built upon the raised 7th of the key. And then I go back to this D, E, G chord that I've used over here. Now, again, this, well, look at that. Like, I don't even think this should be on C sharp. I think this should be on D, if anything. But I'm just going to leave it there. Anyway, point is, I'm not sure if this was the best choice. Maybe it was good, I think. I'm not sure. But the reason why I doubt this choice, this selection, was because there isn't really... I mean, this E, like, wants to resolve to F, right? But that's it. Like, if this was an A sharp instead, so if we had a diminished 2 chord, this could go like this, D, F, A. Problem is, we don't have that, so that 2 isn't really going to resolve to a 1, right? Or it's not even a 2 chord, though. So, again, I'm not exactly sure like, if that's bad, or not. To me, it sounded good, like this anyway, like it worked. So I think until I'm more knowledgeable, I will leave it like that. Uh, and then what else? So that's basically it actually for the women's choir. Um, then we've also got it doubled in the where is it? Men's choir here. It's doubled in the men's choir. The exact same thing. Nothing's different. Even for the following section here. And just quickly I'll mention it. The following section, like before this here section B here, this is literally almost the exact same thing as this, just with the notes or the rhythm taken out. Just whole notes now. That's what's happening. Just whole notes. Uh, Violas, doubling the thirds, or well, not just the thirds, but you know, it's doubling the chords, part of the chords. Cello doing the same thing. Cello playing this waltz-like pattern, You've got your 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then the bass line doing pedal tones, along with this leading tone here. And the bass actually now, well, rather it's actually still the same thing, but I think I should explain it better. That this bass line here, or the staccato, right? So this is kind of acting like it's like the accent on the downbeat. So it's like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Right? That's what's happening. That's what this is serving as. Is that all for the MIDI? No, not quite actually. Or actually, no, I did go over this part. So yeah, I mean that's basically it. Let me actually play this solo for you so that you can hear it. It's an interesting addition. I think without this, I feel like the chorus would have felt a lot slower and boring. Interestingly enough, to me at least, it feels like this little bit made a significant change to the chorus. So, yeah, I mean, the only thing now I question with is, should I have made it louder? Should I have mixed better? Well, I mean, of course, that's not even a question. I should have mixed better. But what I'm trying to get at is when I try to, revise this track and all tracks, and when I'm sitting here looking at this, should I aim to make this louder? I feel like I shouldn't, because I don't know. Because you can hear it already. It's just not very loud. So I don't know. I guess that's always subject to review. Anything going on with the harmony? No. Oh, I think I did forget to show the drums though. The percussion rather. Yeah, the percussion. So the percussion before was slow. Comparatively, the velocity was low. It was pretty quiet. Now it's like gone full blast, right? You can see down here that the rhythm is a lot more lively. And, the velocities are very much different. And speaking of velocities, you might have noticed, like, what is this guy doing? His velocities are just pretty flat. They're pretty flat, there's like no expression, no dynamics going on. Again, the reason for this is because, like I said before, I don't have a lot of time. In fact, these aren't even humanized, so like as you can see, each and every single note is played exactly on each beat. There's not even like one discrepancy or anything of the sort. So I don't have the time for this really at the moment. When things are, more or rather, when Twilight Rites becomes an even bigger priority for me, right? Then I will go through all of this stuff and actually try to make it, as professional as I possibly can. And I hope by that point that I will be, working on a professional level, or at a professional level, I should say. So, what else have we got? Uh, we've also got symbols. Symbols here, boring, in my opinion. I mean, what I have right now, it works. But I think what I could have done is, there is a part in the bass, or no, sorry, not the bass, but there is a part in the percussion where, it goes like dun, 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 dun. So that, dun, dun. I feel like I could have, done something like that. I should also mention that at the time I did compose this track, I didn't really have access to great um, percussion libraries. Uh, I I do have cine samples here for my percussion, but if I had to be completely honest, I am not a fan of cine samples timpani by any means. Um, I one I don't know how you're supposed to affect the velocity of the instrument or the VST when you use it in MIDI. And two, when you play a note, it's always played as a roll. Let me correct that. In fact, let me even just show you. Oh, okay. So now with the soft mallets, rather. So my mistake. But I do know that if you play with the hard mallets or is it the medium mallets, one of those patches, for some reason, there's always like a constant, like hitting. It just keeps going. Like if you put a long note, it's just always playing, right? Problem is that you have to put a very short note, and sometimes when you put a very short note, some of the samples, the sound samples, have been recorded differently, so different, lengths of MIDI, they do different things, and it's very strange. So I'm not really a fan of cine samples, and soft malice anyway would not work here. I would need something that I can clearly hear, not something, to provide ambience. So anyway, uh, when I do revise this track, it might be done with a better percussion, but until that point, it's gonna stay like this. And then for the rest of the chorus, I did show that this is, we're just doing it's yeah, over here. We are just doing like glued notes here, so nothing's really changed. Right? Where is it here? Sorry. It's basically the same thing, just like now it's rising instead of falling in the second repeat. And so while that's happening, we're preparing for a modulation, a temporary tonicization into E minor. So what this chord really looks like is, with all the harmonies, it's sorry, not a dominant fifth, but rather just a major 5 chord. It's just that in the choir here there isn't the inclusion of, well, the 5th scale, or the 5th of A, so E. But it is there. It is there. It's played, yeah, by the violins. So what that does is then we go from this major 5 to this diminished chord, which then leads into this E minor chord, right? The minor 1 in E. So, I suppose it's time to look at the small bit of not modulation, sorry, the automation that's happening here. So what's happening is that as we're leading into the brass section, the volume of the women is dropping, and the reverb control of the brass ensemble is being altered here. So how it's being altered exactly is that when this value gets lower, the brass is going to sound like it's closer to you. And when it gets higher, it's going to sound like it's further away from you. And when it's further away, you can hear more reverb. That's sort of to mimic, the whole perceived volume as opposed to objective volume. So anyway, that happens, and then it leads into the brass section. I'm gonna play it right here. I like to think of this section as like Malach's wrath, if that makes sense. This section, with the chorus, that section I would think is like his lament, whereas this portion is his wrath, and I think that makes sense because, at least to me, the brass here feels like an aggressive edge. So, I don't know. I guess that's what it is. I guess it's simply a touch aggressiveness this time as opposed to everything that was before. Don't know what I would call the first phase though in terms of emotion, but that's besides the point. So then looking at the MIDI for the brass, well, let's actually mention what we've got going on for instruments here. We've got bass trombones. I can tell you what they're doing. They are outlining the bass, like the bass line. Just simply the bass line. So our E, and then this E flat or D sharp, whatever you want to call it. In this case, it would be a D sharp. But D sharp, our leading tone. And we're doing this chromatic type of stepwise motion here with the bass. So we're going from E to D sharp to D. Back up to D sharp. And then to D to C sharp. And that kind of gets us back to our D minor. It's like a preparation for D minor, right? Same thing is going on with the Simbasi here, right? The exact same thing is going on. Oh, I should also mention that during this section leading up to the brass section, there is a horn that's slowly getting louder as it's getting closer, as the perceived loudness is getting closer. I should have mentioned that. My mistake. And you can see it here. It's playing this line, this, G, A sharp, so it's going 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 3, 2, 4, 5, 6, and then we're at 5 in E minor. The tubas, as I was mentioning before, are doing the same thing as the Simbasi and the bass trombones. They are, just outlining the bass, simply. And that's the bass is what's controlling, the tonicization here. Along with, of course, the harmony. There is the harmony going on here in the men's choir. One thing I do feel, a bit kind of odd about here is that chorus goes from 5 voices to the part that follows the chorus, main chorus. I don't know what to call it. It drops to 4 voices, and then the biggest gripe I have with it is that, okay, this voice is climbing up, this 4th voice is climbing up, and it doesn't go anywhere. It just disappears. I'm not sure if I like that, and I'm not sure if that is, another one of those orchestration crimes that I should say, or I don't know if orchestration is actually correct terminology, but I'm not sure if this is like a compositional error, crime, whatever you want to call it. But you know what? Again, until I'm revising this track, I'm gonna leave it as it is. So then we drop to 3 voices here, and as you can see, we've got the men's choir just playing the harmony here. So what happens is that we're going from our 1, minor 1, minor 4 to dominant 5th, and then instead of resolving back to our tonic, we actually slip a half step lower with our bass line, and then we actually even slip another half step lower with this accidental, this F, this is a minor second interval, the E to F. That's out of key. And the reason for this, when I do this, let me actually isolate this for you, and I will play it. You're gonna hear that this portion, this D minor chord here, it gives a kind of tragic quality, rather than if I were to have this as a D major. Here, let me play it for you. So I had this playing, sorry. Let me just isolate that as well. Now you're gonna hear it with the major, D major chord here. It's not bad, of course. There's like this works, and this leads nicely into this E flat minor here. Problem is, I think this tragic quality of the accidental here just works better. Leading into E flat minor. So then what's happening here is that we're going from a new tonicization into E flat minor, right? Or modulation, I should say, sorry. Modulation into E flat minor. We've got this same chord again, the same architecture of the chord that happened over, sorry, here it's where it's clearest. Right, it's the exact same thing. E flat, F, and G, right? And we find this over here. No, where is it? That's the loop. That's E flat, F, and I said G, but I mean to say G sharp, A flat. But yeah, so anyway, like I was saying, it's the same thing we find there. I keep going a little too far. Sorry. Anyway, yeah, that's the same thing there. And then we go to our dominant fifth again. That would be B flat major, with the at its minor 7 interval. I believe that is the correct thing to say there. Forgive me again, professional composers, if I'm wrong. So we've got that there. Okay, and now again, this would want to resolve back to this tonic, the minor 1, due to the leading tone used here. But we slip down another half step, and we use this again, this minor second interval again, using the what's it called, the secondary dominant actually. So we're tonicizing this D minor here with that, right? Because we're using the dominant fifth. So the 505, or well, I get okay. That's not the 505 because this is not the fifth of E flat. So my mistake. That's incorrect. But what we're doing is, we're using the fifth of D minor, shifting from E flat minor. So, that neatly sets us back up into D minor, because if you listen to this, I could end the piece there, or, well, I could end this little bit here, and it sounds resolved. That's complete. I could call that a cadence, a perfect cadence, right? But we don't end there, of course. But even before that, I gotta show you what's happening with the strings. So we've got the strings, they're just playing the harmony. Violas are playing sustain here. I'm gonna assume that was intentional, while the rest are playing tremolos here. I seriously hope that was intentional. Of course, again, I'll revise it later on, and we'll see if I change that or not. Anyway, point being, what we've got here now is that there's this automation setup, and again, nothing really new. It's just like pretty much the exact same thing as what's going on here. It's just now it's starting on the high rather than going from low to high. Excuse me. So, we've also got this first violin here. The push and pull, I guess you could say, of this volume automation. It has not, or it is not in line, as you can see, with these automations. And that's okay, because I want this to kind of, peak at different points. We've got the volume of the horns, sort of like leading up to the peak, We've got the reverb control for the tubular over here. It's kind of hard to see, but what's happening here is that the tubular is going to sound further away now. That's what's happening there. And then what else? I guess I didn't really show the melody, right? How that works with these tonicizations. So we play them. So what's happening here is that a lot of these are chord tones. We've got some passing tones going on. Well, there's like this A. I guess this G sharp here is a passing tone. G sharp. No, I don't think that is a passing tone, because I see this here. Yeah, so that's not a passing tone. But yeah, I mean, mostly it's chordal, texture. Chord tones. Where is this? 9 horns. Yep. Okay. And so what we see happening here, I've got one line playing sustain, one playing marcato, Uh, I'm using Metropolis Arc 1's brass ensemble here. And the Marcato, I mean, I'm using the Marcato even on these longer notes here, paired with the sustains just because it gives like that push that the sustains don't quite have. But it doesn't last as long, right? So that's why I've got the sustains. So anyway, yeah, this is like, I mean, nothing really interesting. In fact, this is a kind of a reminiscent of Somneros, the Nightmare Eternal, uh, who I will say in the lore actually is the like big bad evil guy, technically, technically speaking. But anyway, so then what do we have over here? Looks like we've just got our chord outlined. You know, just this B to this 7 here, to this F sharp, which is the 5th of B, and this D. So that kind of outlines like a B minor 7 chord, I would say. Assuming I'm not butchering that chord name there. Then what do we have here? An F sharp to G sharp, back down to the F sharps. This is like a neighbor tone, I believe that's called. And then another case. And then it's leading F to G sharp. This, I remember when I was composing this section, I was having like a bit of a problem with it. And that was because I think now that I've, you know, in the time that has transpired since I composed this piece, I think I realized that this augmented interval was bothering me, and I didn't know like that, because it was an augmented interval. So I'm not sure if maybe now if I used, if I raised this F, would that have sounded like right to me? Forgot to change it here. I think that sounds right because, I think that's, trying to do some melodic minor, like raise 6 there. I think I could be very wrong because I'm not that I'm not too advanced, to kind of like understand it with all the harmonies that's happening here. I would have to take a while to dissect it, which is kind of doing this on a whim. That's what it looks like to me. And then I believe this is an augmented interval. So that's why when I would first hear this, I'm guessing that's why that sounded weird to me. But you know what? It might even be better this way because, it doesn't sound right. And I mean, should it sound right? You've got this human, Malach, who is the holy blade of the abyss, whatever the hell that is supposed to mean. And I mean, clearly he's a big bad guy, so should it really sound so clean, so, pleasant? No, I don't think so. Anyway, moving onward. After the brass section, we go back to this, I call it a phase 2 loop. That's not to say that this is where it loops. In fact, it loops here at 508, approximately. But what I mean to say with this phase 2 loop is that this is the setup for, this is the preparation, right? So what's happening in the preparation? Well, let's actually look at the big picture real quick. Still got the same, automations going on here. Percussion volume has dropped. The reason for that is because the percussion has not changed since the chorus. So I'm just letting you know that beforehand because I'm not going to look at the percussion MIDI. And then what have we done? We have reintroduced the ambience because this section is quiet, or comparatively quiet. It's more of phase 1 than it is of phase 2. And you can hear that here. We've got that tremolo sustain, and it's being altered, played around with via, their volume. We bring back this piece of ambience here as well. What else have we got? Oh, right, we've also, I didn't even mention it. Well, I mean, I did mention it for the brass section, but I guess for here, we did bring back this kind of like, eerily high string sustain. Playing the tonic and the leading tone. Same thing with the bass. Celli doing basically the exact same thing as here. Nearly 1-to-1. Just a bit different, we've got this A to B flat. Well, okay, I said the percussion didn't change, but it's mostly the same. It's just not as many hits. There's less MIDI going on there. Rhythms changed a bit. Not too drastically, though. We've also got the second violin here. Tremolo line, highlighting the tonic, the leading tone. Sustain, purely sustain articulation, playing the, well, 5th, 4th, 6th scale degrees. And then, what else have we got? We've got symbols. I mean, it's just the rising symbols here. Again, signifying something's changing. We've got also the second violin here. So bringing back in that waltz kind of feel. You can hear it actually in the track when it plays. However, at the very beginning, implied by the velocity here, it starts off super quiet and it keeps climbing its way up every single time the set of 3 eighth notes plays. So it's most clear at the end there. You could hear like the dun 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 dun. That's what it was. And then it falls back even harder now. Now there's even fewer things going on here. There are even fewer things here. Ambience is dying down again, And once it reaches this point, right here, basically 508, it has come to a full loop, starting from what is supposed to be the cutscene. And it loops phase 2 again. So, that is basically it. That is Malach, Holy Blade of the Abyss. I'm trying to think. Is there anything else that I missed? No, I think that would be it. Like, maybe going back to the whole Heolstor inspiration, uh, you know, with how I've given this phase one, this, like, the phase one was clearly inspired by Heolstor, looking at it. But then now, moving into the phase two, the way I see it is like, this is giving the the enemy or the boss, the boss, I'm giving more emphasis on the boss's story rather than how Shioi Miyazawa, he lent more into, you know, the characters having this, or at least that's what it feels like to me. And it felt more like an uplifting phase two for Heolster. Um, so this is, when I was listening to Heolsters, like what I portrayed in phase two here is what I was expecting to hear with Heolster's phase two. And I'm not saying, like, once again, I'm not saying that Shoei Miyazawa did anything wrong, nor am I critiquing in a sense, like, am I saying that, oh, maybe, he could have done this? I'm just saying that, that's what I was expecting. That's simply what I was expecting. But otherwise, Yolster's an amazing track. Very good. I wish I could compose like that. Um, but yeah, this is like, I guess you could call it my take on it. Uh, although it is, I think it's pretty original. Honestly, I don't think anyone would, you know, come over to this track and say, "Oh yeah, uh, well, you clearly went for something like Hulster." I don't think anyone would do that, but yeah. So I think that's it. I think that's just about it. And I think I've talked for it more than, enough time. Uh, so yeah, I hope I hope this was informative in the slightest at the very least, and I hope that what I was explaining was not, confusing, or, that the concepts I was talking about were wrong, you know, and if they are, you can always feel free to ask me for clarification. Um, and just because, this is fun to me to analyze tracks. And I am also, like, kind of getting more involved into this type of thing, analyzing tracks and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, this was fun to do, and I hope those of you who did want to see this dissection of, like, some arbitrary track, which I chose to be Malach's this time around, will be appreciated. I hope so. But yeah, thank you.